Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the West Suffolk series, 103 parishes set in some of the most beautiful English countryside, and there's some good ones in this area. Shall we go have a look? Of course. Hello again, West Suffolk. It's time for episode number 4 here in your beautiful part of East Anglia. Now the weather is still not very nice. It's not raining though, which is a good thing. There's a bit of water in the air, but it's nothing like what it was like in Exning or in Herringswell, for example. But the wind is now an issue. The wind is blowing a gale. So apologies in advance if the sound quality of this episode is not all that great. Where are we? Well, we're on the outskirts of the town of Mildenhall. We're in a place called Barton Mills. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Barton Mills, corn farm by the mill. Round 4 in West Suffolk brings us to a large village just to the south of the market town of Mildenhall, Barton Mills. As a village, this one has existed for centuries, but it's only very recently that the name Barton Mills has been adopted. It was originally called Barton Parva or Little Barton, but 18th century maps never showed it as such. Instead, they showed a turnpike road from London to Norwich, which these days is the modern A11, and in bold letters where it crossed the River Lark were the words Barton Mills. This was a literal reference to the corn mills on the river. The name was therefore adopted as the unofficial handle of the village, but it's stuck ever since. And it's not a small place either. It boasts 2 pubs, a village hall and a superb playing field, as well as the busy Fiveways roundabout where the A11 crosses the A1065 and the A1101 between Bury St Edmunds and Long Sutton in Lincolnshire. The village is known for its Scarecrow Festival, held on a biannual basis. This festival has featured in the Guinness Book of World Records in the past for having the most scarecrows ever made at any one time. It's a record that's since been broken, but hey, it's still a claim to fame, right? Let's see what else can put this lovely village here in West Suffolk on the map. Let's go. Okay, now to kick this episode off, I've got a little drive for you into Barton Mills, away from this road here. Now I can't drive down this, I can't walk down this, so I've literally just decided just to park at the end, just to talk a bit about this. There's an old railway station down there. Now ideally I would like to drive down there and actually show you the building, because from the road you can actually see the old platforms and bits and bobs of the old station, but I can't go down a private road either in the car or with the camera on foot, unfortunately. So we're going to drive into Barton Mills, and as we do that I will talk a bit about this. I'm not going to lie, it was a little disappointing I couldn't capture the old station here, but I can at least tell you about it. We're driving away from the old Mildenhall station, the northeastern terminus of the Cambridge to Mildenhall Railway. It was a line built in 2 stages, with the stretch up to Mildenhall opening in 1895. Despite the name, the station is on the south side of the River Lark and as such just within Barton Mills Parish. It served passengers until 1962. It's since been converted into a private house, hence the private road, and its goods shed has been used by local businesses for storage and other purposes. It's just over a mile between Mildenhall and Barton Mills, and the station isn't the only thing of note between the two. On a bend in the road you'll find the Nora Hanbury Kelp Meadows, a small nature reserve that forms part of the River Lark's floodplain. They're named after the lady who in the 1930s owned them, when this part of West Suffolk was still largely rural. The meadows were gifted to the Suffolk Wildlife Trust in the 1980s. Before we start walking, let's first get this out of the way. Barton Mills is famous for its Scarecrow Festival, which is held on a biannual basis. The festival began in 1994 and raises money for local charities. These have in the past included the East Anglian Air Ambulance and the charity that runs the village hall. When held, the Barton Mills Scarecrow Festival takes over the entire village for 2 whole days. Roads are closed, except to residents, and there's all sorts of activities that take place, including live music, food, dancing, and car boot sales at the local playing fields. Of course, the biggest attraction is the scarecrows themselves. Typically, there's around 800 of them, all created by the local residents. The festival has in the past been featured in the Guinness Book of Records, boasting the most scarecrows ever made at any one time, when more than 1,000 were on show. This record has since been surpassed by the National Forest Adventure Farm near Burton-on-Trent. Upwards of 20,000 visitors come from all over the UK to witness this spectacle. Let's start as we mean to go on. Here on the Mildenhall Road at Barton Mills' westernmost extent, we have a parish notice board. Mark it off. All around the village you'll meet these cracking information boards. Barton Mills has a rich history and heritage, and a lot of it has been written down over the centuries. The first board tells us about the village hall. This was built in 1931 on land that was farmed by Richard Last. It's now managed by a charity. Barton Mills WI was formed in 1958 and meets in the village hall on the second Tuesday of every month. Despite what's on your screens now, be prepared on this route to see a lot of jaw-droppingly gorgeous buildings. We don't have to go far to find one. This house, which resembles a castle, is Church Cottage. Madly, it's not a listed building. It's built of knapped flint, trimmed with brick in the regional style. It can be found at the end of Grange Lane and Church Lane, which form a junction with Mildenhall Road and the street. This is like the de facto village square. It's also where the village sign is located. Next, it's the church. Dedicated to St Mary, this is the oldest and most notable building in the village. The present building dates from the late 12th century, although it's likely there was a wooden church here in Saxon times. There was certainly a church on this site in 1154, as this is confirmed in a charter from the brother of Henry II. The north doorway dates from the 14th century, though the door itself was replaced to commemorate the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II in 1953. It has 3 bells which are rung regularly every Sunday, and they date from 1527, 1533 and 1608. Mildenhall Road has now become the street. This is Barton's main thoroughfare from Mildenhall to the A11. Most of the village lies along this very road, although I will just make you aware there are some side streets and cul-de-sacs here and there, like for example Church Meadow. As a general rule of thumb, all the historic stuff is on the street or just off it. The further you go to the east, the closer you get to the River Lark, upon which once stood the mills referenced in the name of the village. It's just over half a mile long in total. Here's the entrance to Barton Hall, which was built in 1745. The land, which is now Nora Hanbury Kelp Nature Reserve, used to belong to the Hall. It's one of 9 listed buildings in Barton Mills, a list which includes one of the 2 pubs, the Bull Inn. The other pub, the Bell, isn't listed. That's next, along with the phone box. The Bell dates from around 1700. Centuries ago, the pub part was actually in the building on the corner of Bell Lane, which is now accommodation. The present bar room was a bakery. During World War II, the Bell also served as the local post office. This is Bell Corner, where we find another of these great little information boards. This one tells you about the other pubs and alehouses that once existed here, and also raises the village's connection to Sir Alexander Fleming, the man who discovered penicillin. Directly opposite this board you see a house called White Lodge. It used to be a care home, and many older Barton residents were born there. The house next to it is called the Doon, which Fleming used as a country retreat in the 1930s. Fleming would sell the house in 1955. Moving on up the street, we next come to the Old Church School. This was built in 1845 and consisted originally of one classroom with an entrance on either side. During the war, it was used as accommodation for the army. It's now a house. That brings us to the Baptist Chapel. Dating from 1844, this was built to replace a house that had been converted into a chapel which had served Barton since 1810. Baptisms here were often carried out in the River Lark. You wouldn't dream of doing that these days, would you? It's the old reading room next, which is another private residence these days. It was established in 1920 as a workman's club and recreation room. It stands opposite the rectory, and on your screens now is its entrance gate. The reading room exists thanks to the Burrell Trust, which is very important to Barton Mills. It was set up by Maria Louisa Burrell in memory of her husband Percy. As well as funding the room, the trust has also contributed massively to the upkeep and maintenance of the village hall and the recreation ground. Next, with the sunshine on its wall, is Street Farm. This dates back to 1490 and it's notable for being the finest Wealden-type house anywhere in Suffolk. It's had several name changes in the past. Some sources refer to it as Paradise Farm, including that on its Grade 2 listing. Just up the street is the Lord Mayor's Cottage, which is 15th century. Its first owner was Henry de Barton, a skinner from Mildenhall, who was Lord Mayor of London in 1416 and in 1430, hence the name. It has in its time also been used as a sweet shop and as a nursery school. This building is called the Old Maltings, a surefire way to know that we're approaching the river and the site of the old mills. The Bull Inn has stood on this bend since the 16th century. In the past, the inn grounds boasted a bowling green, a lawn tennis court and a croquet lawn. None of them exist today though. It was a favourite stopping place on the journey from London to Norwich, King's Lynn or Swaffham for mail and stagecoaches. Legend has it that both Queen Elizabeth I and Queen Victoria slept here in their respective times. Next we go up Old Mill Lane, and here we have the fast-flowing but pretty River Lark. This river was the driving force behind the water wheels of Barton's corn mills. Mills have been a thing here for centuries, but it was the corn mill that stood on this bridge that gave the village its once makeshift name, since adopted officially. The mill stood adjacent to the modern-day Larkspur Cottage and was a working concern until the 1940s. It was pulled down between 1948 and 1950. It was owned by the Parker family, who still own Lark Mills in Mildenhall. Old Mill Lane is a dead end, but you can walk through to the A11 here. Look left and you'll spot an ambulance station. That's the East of England Ambulance Service, which employs around 100 people. The station has been here for decades, but was recently given a much needed upgrade. The station can be found behind a branch of Five Guys off the A11, which was originally a little chef when it was built. This, along with the adjacent petrol station, forms part of Barton Mills services. We'll be driving around those a bit more later. So here is the A11, which serves as the modern connection between London and Norwich. The two cities have been connected for centuries. In 1768, this connection was via a turnpike, which included the bridge over the river. Some residents still refer to the old road as the Turnpike. The modern A11 was built in 1963. This building used to be a pub on the route of the old road. It was called the Dog and Partridge and closed in the 1990s. Let's follow the route of the old turnpike for a while now as we start to head back towards the village's western end. Now initially I thought this building was some sort of communal structure like a hall or such like. It turns out it wasn't, but then I noticed a sign near its entrance that said cellars. If you follow the track that runs behind it, you're met with this huge field. The cellars sign refers to car boot sales which take place here on Sundays and bank holiday Mondays. Last year, the organisers submitted an application to West Suffolk Council for them to be held on Saturdays too in the future, believing there's a strong demand for all weekend trading. Okay, so now there's nothing for a good half a kilometre along here as we head back towards the beginning until we reach Bell Lane again, where I'll take a right turn, then we'll turn left as we head towards the playing field, which will be our last part of this episode. This last section of the walk sees us make our way back to the start via a couple of already familiar streets and a few we've yet to discover. That thatched cottage sits at the southern end of Bell Lane, which is all houses. So too is Church Lane Close, which we can access via a short linkway between the two streets. Barton Mills hasn't seen much in the way of new development since the 1960s, so I guess you could argue this is the newest part of the village. These semi-detached houses give way firstly to Church Lane and then to Burrell Crescent. There's no prizes for guessing how this street got its name. Burrell Crescent curves its way around to the superb village green, which is the ideal time to talk about Barton Mills Football Club. The earliest record of a club in the village dates from 1910. They originally played by what is now the Fiveways restaurant before moving to Brown's Farm Meadows on Tuddenham Road. In 1952 they moved to the Green, and in the early 1980s they became a member club of the Cambridgeshire County Leagues. Today they run a total of 3 sides. Okay, we are all the way around Barton Mills. We've just got one more thing left to cover, and as the sky grows ever darker, it means nighttime is coming. That's not a problem because I'm staying right here in this parish tonight. I'm staying in Travelodge Barton Mills, which is on a roundabout on the end of the A11. Let's put the camera on the dash because there's a few things up there apart from the hotel which I do want to touch on. There's a few household names, shall we say, up there. My hotel, Barton Mills Travelodge, is located at Barton Mills Services, which occupy either side of the busy Fiveways roundabout, where the A11 meets 2 other major roads. These are the A1101 between Bury St Edmunds and Long Sutton, and the A1065 which runs into North Norfolk. Barton Mills Services has plenty of familiar names, as well as the Five Guys restaurant, which we've already seen. The western side has a petrol station and a McDonald's, whilst the eastern side has the Travelodge, a Burger King, a Greggs, and a third petrol station. Fiveways was built in the 1960s and had a service station literally known as Fiveways Garage. It shared the land with properties named Chase End and Hargate. The garage remained until 2013, largely unchanged from that 1960s building, but it was demolished to make way for the McDonald's and the Shell garage on the western side. The A11 has changed too since those days. It was dualled in 1986, something which greatly increased the service's footfall. Time for me to head to the Travelodge now and get my head down before doing it all again in the morning. Join me next week, where we'll be exploring some more of West Suffolk. Good night. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.